Lesson 4-4, Dividing by Decimals. The main idea of this lesson is to be able to divide decimals by decimals. Here's our first example. 14.19 divided by 2.2. So remember, we start by drawing a den, and the first number goes inside the den, and the second number goes on the outside of the den. Since we're dividing a decimal into a decimal over here, we have to get rid of the decimal point on the outside of the den. So we have to figure out how many times do we have to move the decimal over in order to get rid of it. If I move it over once, it'll be at the end of the number and it'll all be gone. So that's what I'm going to do. But if I move the decimal here, it means I also have to move the decimal over the same number of places over here. So since I moved the decimal point once here, I also have to move it once, and that means the new decimal point is going to go right there. So now we're going to do the division. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 22 go into 1? It doesn't. It's too small. How many times does 22 go into 14? It can't. 14 is still too small. So now we're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 22 go into 141? Well, I don't know, but we could count by 20s because 20 is awful close to 22. So we go 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140. Well, 140 is awful close to 141, and we might not have all those extra numbers that we need because it's actually 22. So I'm gonna estimate the first time that we should multiply 22 times 6. And I'm going to do my multiplication here. And I get 132. Well, I couldn't add 22 more. I would get a number over 141. So 6 was a safe estimate. So that means 22 goes into 141 6 times. And I'm going to write the 132 underneath it. And now we're going to subtract. And now we have to figure out how many times does 22 go into 99. So again, I'm going to count by 20s. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Again, 100 is awful close to 99, but it's probably a little too big. So I'm going to try 22 times 4. And I get 88. So I'm going to I couldn't add 22 more. I'd get a number over 99. So that means 88 must be it. So I'm going to put a 4 here. I'm going to put the 88 underneath here. And I'm going to subtract. And I get 11. Now I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 22 go into 11? It can't. So that means we have to add the 0 on the end. And we're going to bring that 0 down. So now we're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 22 go into 110? So we're going to count 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120. So 120 is going to be too big, but 100 is going to be close enough. So that means we want to do 22 times 5. And we get 110. So that means that was just right. So I'm going to put a 5 here. And we're going to subtract, oops, and we end up getting 0. So that means our answer's all done. Now remember, we just have to put the decimal in, so we're going to bring the decimal point straight up, and we're going to get 6.45. So that means 14.19 divided by 2.2 is 6.45. So that means dividing decimals by decimals is exactly the same as dividing a decimal by a whole number, but this time you have to move the decimal point over as many times as you have to, so the number on the outside of the den is a whole number. However many times you move the decimal out here is the same number of times that you have to move the decimal point in here. And that's all there is to doing dividing decimals by decimals.